Good night. How are you? Good.
So today we'll continue working on the speaking section. Yesterday we were doing task number 3, right? The third question of the speaking section. And we saw the structure, we saw the format. Remember that for that task you needed to first read an article, then listen to a lecture where the professor gives you 1 or 2 examples about that article and about the concept that you had in the article. And then you had to summarize everything, right? But always making sure to connect the ideas and showing that you know, right, how they are related. We also saw the template. So this was the template for one example, and then the other one was for when you have 2 examples. And we also talked about the topics that you have, right? Psychology, biology, and business. And I remember that we got to do the 3 of them. So we do one sample for psychology, another one for business, and the other one, the final one was for biology, right? So today we'll practice. We'll be looking at different sample, at different questions, and we'll be answering them. But before we start there, I wanted to make sure that everybody has the template because we are going to be using it today. So if you guys don't have the template, you could take a screenshot now and give the template on your computers so that you can use it for today's class. Okay, so this is the first one when you have one example in the lecture. Does everyone have the template already? This is the second one, right? When you get 2 examples. Okay, guys. So do you have any questions before we start practicing? No questions? Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Okay.
Yes.
So in that case, let's start practicing. This is going to be the first one that we do. And remember that you have 45 seconds to read the text. So please, you may start reading the text now.
Teacher, I can't hear the audio.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Me too, teacher. I can hear.
Great.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a business management class.
So let me tell you about my own experience with this when I was working for a computer company a couple of years ago. So one day a coworker and I suggested we should give our computers a design makeover, make them look more up to date. Market research was showing that new customers said they would be more interested in buying our computers if they looked cooler. Our technology was advanced, but the outside design looked really old-fashioned. At first, more than half the group supported us. There were a few senior managers there, though, who didn't support the design change. One of the senior managers said, "Our focus has always been on technology. Changing the look is an unnecessary cost." Almost immediately, some of our supporters changed their minds. Even my coworker changed his mind. When I asked him why after the meeting, he told me he didn't want to make a bad impression on the senior managers. He thought that disagreeing with them might jeopardize his chances of getting a promotion by not looking like a team player. What about me? I hate to admit it, but after a few hours of discussion, I started wondering if it was worth everyone's time to argue about this. As more people sided with senior management, I started to feel like I was the only one holding up the vote. Everyone else seemed to think change wasn't necessary, so I voted against my own idea in the end. So we unanimously decided to stay with the current old-looking design. But this decision ended up costing us a lot of money. That same year, our competitor came out with a new design that attracted some of our customers and prevented us from profiting on potential new customers.
Now the question says, explain groupthink and its effects using the example of the computer company. You will now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So who wants to start? Who wants to go first? Maybe Manuel?
Me, teacher?
Okay, Sebas, great. Go ahead, please.
Okay. What group think, in summary, is to vote against your idea. In the lecture, this man gives an example of one idea of his mate, saying that it would be a good idea to update their computers and sell them because they looked like old-fashioned. He explains that the senior management disagreed with this idea, and the result was that everybody voted against that idea. Even this man voted against his idea because he thought that it was a good idea, but not.
Okay. Thank you, Sebas. Hold on. So, okay, I can see that you got the ideas, the main ideas, both the reading and the lecture. But maybe the way to the way that you're expressing them could be improved. So first thing, when you give your the definition of groupthink, make sure that you refer to the reading in one way or the other. So you could say the reading states that groupthink is this, or you could use a template to say, according to the reading, groupthink is this, I don't know. Or so groupthink from the reading is something that refers to the reading. And careful, right? Because what you said, the definition of grouping is what you got from the lecture. But you need to make sure that when you give the definition, it has to be something from the reading. So I don't know if it's really voting against your own idea, but I think it's, they say that it's the process in which groups make bad decisions, right? Because of the group pressure. With the process in which groups make bad decisions because of the group pressure. So careful with that definition. And then when you talk about the example, especially if it's a story like the one we have right now, also try to refer to the speaker as the professor. And well, in this case, we had a story, right? So make sure that you try to first give some context. So you could say the professor talks about his own experience when he was working in a computer company, and he proposed to make a design makeover to the computers. So that would be the context. And then you can focus, I like actually the fact that you focus more on the results, right? On how, even though in the beginning, many other of the professor's co-workers were supporting the idea, they ended up changing their mind, and everybody ended up voting against the idea of making the design makeover because of the pressure of the group, right? Because they didn't want to look bad, because they didn't want to jeopardize their chances of being liked by the senior management. So that's groupthink, right? Making that bad decision because it cost them a lot of money because of the group pressure. So focus more on connecting those ideas, on going to the results like you did, but also give some context in the beginning, and careful with the way that you're referring to the reading and listening, right? Is that okay? So you have the content. You're just missing having the structure, the correct structure for expressing those ideas. Is that okay? Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, guys. So let's do another one then. All right, let's do this one here. So remember, it's the same idea. You will have now 45 seconds to read the text. Please begin reading now. Okay.
Now listen to a lecture from a marketing class.
Okay, so I've actually got a few different examples of this. When I was a kid, a character named Action Hero was really popular with my friends and me. We would always watch the Action Hero program on television every week and play games, pretending that we were as strong and powerful as he was. Then pretty soon we began seeing these small action hero figures in all the stores. And, well, we all just had to have them. I mean, we'd been watching the television show for so long that
It seemed only natural to want to own the toys, too. Well, I finally grew up and left the action hero television program and toys behind. But now I have a 7-year-old daughter who watches television a lot and also likes to play with her toys. And lately her favorite toy is a cute little baby doll with a big round face and lots of curly hair named Rosa. All my daughter's friends have Rosa dolls too, and they enjoy going to each other's houses to play with them. Then a few weeks ago, my daughter came running up to me all excited because she had just heard there was going to be a new television program on every week with the doll, Rosa, as the main character. So naturally, she and all her friends have begun watching the show, and it's already very popular as the toy doll.
Okay. Now, using the examples from the lecture, explain the concept of entertainment merchandise. You will now have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, guys. So, who wants to be next?
Me, teacher.
Okay, Victor, great. Please go ahead.
According to the passage, entertainment merchandising is defined as a marketing practice in entertainment industry that is very effective. In the lecture, the professor provides 2 examples. First, he explains that when he was a kid, he liked to play with an action hero, and she likes to see an action hero program, and also all their friends watch the same program. So one day, he started to sell action of this action hero. So all the kids want to buy one. In addition, he gives another example that his daughter wants to show new television program about his favorite doll, I think. Yeah.
Exactly, I will hear favorite doll. Okay,
Okay.
that's your pronouns. Okay, so it was good. You were summarizing the 2 examples, but maybe you didn't balance your time too much, right? Try to skip some of the details and try to work a little bit more on the content. In this case, starting from the definition. You say that it's an effective practice in the entertainment industry, but maybe it would be better to know what it is about, right? And actually, if you guys understand well the definition, it gets easier for you to know what information to mention and what maybe to skip when summarizing the examples. In this case, it's a form of marketing in which the brand or image from one product is also used to sell another, right? That would be the key concept. When the brand or the image from one product is used to sell another. So based on that, you now can maybe draw the connections with the examples. So in the example of the professor's program that he saw when he was a kid, he used to watch this TV show, right, about an action hero. And then the image of that TV show, the image of the main character of the TV show was used to sell a toy, right? They created a toy based on the TV show. It was a total success. Now they are doing the same with the professor's daughter's favorite toy, I think, Rosa. So the professor's daughter likes this toy, Rosa, and they are creating a TV show based on the toy, right? So they are using the image of the toy to create a TV show. So emphasizing on those ideas would be good, right? Instead of focusing too much on the details. So is that okay? And careful with the tenses too, right? When you have past examples. Do you guys have any questions? Is it okay? Does everyone get the idea here of what entertainment merchandising is? Okay. Now let's do something different. We've done business, we did psychology. This is not psychology, nor business, nor biology, okay? But let's see what it is. So same thing here, you will have 45 seconds to read the text. Right? Oh, let's listen now to the picture.
Now listen to part of a lecture in an art history class.
All right, so let's consider the work of the outsider artist Henry Darger. Darger lived by himself in a tiny apartment in Chicago in the 1900s. He had no friends and spent all his spare time there alone, creating hundreds of paintings and drawings. He had never formally studied art and kept his work completely private, so no one ever saw it or responded to it during his lifetime. And so when you see Darger's work, you notice how unique it is. It doesn't remind you of anything you've ever seen before. It's very much his own. For example, one piece, it's a watercolor painting. In this piece, he illustrates a story about the adventures of 7 children. But see, Darger had a really hard time drawing human figures, yet he managed to come up with his own rather unique solution for the problem. He simply cut out pictures of children from newspapers and magazines and pasted them into his own painted illustration of trees, flowers, and grass. The results look a little strange. Darger's picture looks more cluttered, more crowded with details than the pictures of other artists, because its entire surface is painted and there are no spaces left empty. It's also a lot longer than the pictures of most other artists, about 9 feet long.
Now the question says, explain why Henry Darger is considered as an outsider artist. You will now have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay. Oh, anyone else that wants to try? Maybe Alejandra?
Okay.
Okay, try.
According to the passage outsider art is defined, describe art that is made by people who choose to live and work outside society. In the lecture, the professor gives the example of Henry Darger in the 1900s, that he not have a formally study art and made things that we never seen before. The professor gives the example of a watercolor painting that have 7 children, and for solve his problem, the disaster solve his problem, search in newspaper children and then paste it in the pictures in the picture. And it is so unconventional.
Okay, good. So the content is great. The content is perfect, I'd say. So great definition in the beginning, maybe go a little bit faster so that you have more time for your example. But it was great. It was, I mean, the correct definition. And then you really explain why Henry Darger is an outsider artist. You explain both reasons, right? Because he lived outside of society. He had no formal art education. And then you also talked about his art and how his art was unconventional. And then you gave the example of the watercolor painting that the professor mentioned. And you gave enough details as well, right? So you talked about how he like pasted these pictures from magazines. So no comments in terms of content, everything was great. Maybe some comments in terms of grammar. Careful with, especially how you're conjugating your verbs, right? So sometimes you said, for example, the professor gave instead of gives. It was like a mix of present and past. So maybe that, careful with the grammar part. Try to review narrating stories in the past. But overall, that was a great response. I have nothing. Okay, guys, do you have any questions so far? No? Okay, so let's first do something about okay, this one here. So remember that you will have 45 seconds to read the text.
Now listen to part of a lecture from a biology class.
Okay, so a good example of this type of plant, common to the rainforest, is the earn plant. The earn plant wraps its roots around the branches of the trees, or sometimes around the trunk near the upper part of the tree. They use the trees for support, and this allows them to reside high in the trees, in the canopy, where they can get plenty of sunlight. Now, the earn plant has a unique shape. It got its name because the formation of its leaves creates a kind of urn or bowl where it can store water. The earn plant has rather long, stiff, spiky leaves. The leaves are slightly overlapping and are tightly rolled into a kind of cone shape or a funnel shape. Its flowers are held on a single stem in the center. Anyway, as I mentioned, the arrangement of the leaves forms a kind of receptacle or bowl at the base, so that as rainwater collects on the leaves, it rolls down into the bowl, where it can be stored. Okay, so its unique shape helps it gather and store water. It also helps it to gather other nutrients. This is because insects, dead leaves from other plants, or other debris land on the leaves and then get washed down into the stored water. Gradually, they decompose. The chemical breakdown creates a nitrogen-rich food source in the stored water. So, the water supply contains a kind of liquid fertilizer that can be released to the plant whenever.
Okay, the audio was cut. So we're gonna use the information we have in our case. So the question says, using the example of the orange plant, explain how epiphytes have adapted to life in the rainforest. Okay, you will now have 30 seconds to prepare your responses. Okay, so does anyone want to try? Maybe Walter?
Okay.
Okay. Please, let's go ahead.
Starting to the article. The epiphytes are plants that are adapted to life in the rainforest, where there are not a lot of sun. For example, in the lecture, the professor gives an example about how some plants can are adapted to take their nutrients from the insects, rainwater, or another plants. The plants used to store water from another plants, and that's the way how these kind of plants are adapted to live in these waters or in these kinds of forest.
Okay, good. So it was actually really good. So you had the right definition for the concept. So they are these type of plants that live in the rainforest where they don't have access to a lot of sunlight or nutrients, and they live inside another plant, right, or a tree. And then you gave the example. Maybe try to be a bit more specific. The good thing here is that in the question, you know the name of the plant that was mentioned as an example by the professor, right? The orange plant. So you have it in the question. Try to use that. Instead of talking about some plants in general, talk about the orange plant. Tell me, in the lecture, the professor gives the example of the orange plant, right? Talk specifically about that plant because that's what the example was about. But then all the information I think was correct as well. I know that in the lecture, maybe we have too many details about like how specifically they get their nutrients, the shape in which, you know, I think it was the flowers grow, and which allows them to storage water. But it's okay if you skip those details, right? And focus on the most important information, which is basically how they have adapted to survive in these conditions. So thank you, well done. Only that will be the only tip. Try to always be a little bit more specific, more accurate with the examples, but it was good. So do you guys have any questions about this? Okay. So in that case, let's do this one here. So it's the same. You have now 45 seconds to prepare your response.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Let's take an everyday example, an ordinary round plate like you'd find in a kitchen. If you hold the plate directly in front of your face and look at it, what shape do you see? A perfect circle, right? Suppose you tilt the plate to a different angle, to a horizontal position, like you're planning to put food on it. Still a perfect circle? No. The circle is now stretched out, flattened into an oval. Do you conclude the plate has actually changed shape? Or that it's a different object, not the same plate? Of course not. It looks different, but we perceive it as still being the same. Here's a different example. This classroom we're in, it's fairly large, right? Now, from up close, from the front row, I appear to be relatively big. Bigger than if you were in the last row, right? But let's say you're sitting in the front row today, but tomorrow you're sitting in the back row. From back there, I'm going to look smaller, but you don't think I've actually gotten smaller. You don't think you're seeing a different professor, a guy who looks like me except he's smaller. No matter where you are, up close or far away, you understand without even thinking about it that I'm the same size, the same person.
Now, explain what is meant by perceptual constancy using the examples provided by the professor. You will now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So maybe now, Narciso?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, Perceptual constancy refers to the way that we can see one object from different uh, angles or perspective, and it can even change the way that we can think. For example, the professor gives the example of one object like circles. For example, in one side we can see in circle form shape and circle shape, and another angle is look like oval. And also he mentioned about the one object.
Okay, this is so nice. So what I could say is always remember to I think your first thing, you're taking too long in explaining the definition, and you're actually explaining it, which you shouldn't be doing, right? When you talk about the definition, when you give it, you should just maybe even copy and paste, right? Don't spend too much time there. You don't have to say it in your own words. Just use whatever you had in the reading, and then you have to focus and focus your examples or the examples given by the professor, uh, and those that with the information that's related to the one that was given in the reading, right? In this case, perceptual constancy is how, even if you see things and objects in different ways and in different shapes and from different angles, as you said, the important thing there is that you can still recognize the object, right? You still know that it's the same object, even if you see it from different angles. So knowing that, maybe you can try to skip some of the details in the example. For example, the one about the plate, right? The professor says that if you see it from upside, maybe it'll look like an oval, or if you see it from this other angle, it'll look like a perfect circle. But you can forget about those details and just say it in general, right? So the professor gives the example of a plate. He explains that no matter from which angle we see the plate, no matter what type of shape we see, we still are able to recognize the object as plate, right? Because that is the most important information, that we can still recognize the object. Maybe that's what I could say. Don't give so many details, don't explain too much the definition either, and focus on summarizing the information a little bit more. Going always to the connection between the reading and the listening. Is that okay? Yes, does anyone have any questions?
No, teacher.
Okay. So let's do this one here now. This is sociology. Very interesting. We will now have 45 seconds to read the text.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a zoology class.
Let's start with an example you may be familiar with. What's one thing dogs typically do when they feel threatened, when they want to protect themselves? That's right, they show their teeth. And when we see this, we know this behavior means basically stay away. Now, here's how this behavior became a recognizable warning. A long, long time ago, a dog sensing danger would get ready to bite whatever animal was threatening it. It started by baring its teeth, but the purpose of doing this was something very simple. The dog instinctively was making sure it wouldn't bite its own lips when it bit the other animal, okay? But what happened? Other dogs, other animals, over time, they learned that this teeth-baring always came before a dog was going to bite, and so they started to read it as a signal to be careful, to keep away or risk getting bitten. This scenario, repeated time after time, also led to the dog's awareness that by simply showing its teeth, a lot of the time that was protection enough. What had been a simple physical preparation to bite had developed into a kind of defense mechanism in and of itself. The dog learned it did not need to actually attack, but could get the right result from just communicating the possibility of an attack through showing its teeth. It started to use this behavior as a warning signal.
Now, explain the concept of ritualization using the example of dogs discussed by the professor. We'll now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So who wants to try this one?
Me, teacher.
Okay, great. Start. Go ahead, please.
According to the passage, ritualization is defined as a communication behavior that's used in animals. In the lecture, the professor gives the example of dogs. He explains that the dogs show their teeth in order to protect themselves. So it's recognizing by other dogs than seeing that warning advice. So dogs learning that from other animals, and also other animals recognize this behavior as a simple mechanism to protect or to show that the dog is warning. So this is was calling as a ritualization in the lecture and explained by the professor.
Okay, great. Like your conclusion. Now, in this case, everything was great. Maybe in terms of content, I am not totally sure. You said that ritualization is a communicative behavior, right? But I'm not sure if that's really the definition. I think that it's a process, right? It's a process in which the purpose of a given behavior changes over time. So this behavior originally had a practical purpose. It was useful for something, but now it's just a communicative behavior, right? So it's that process of changing the purpose of the behavior. And now that you, like, when you are able to fully comprehend the definition of the concept ritualization, you can maybe understand better the example too. Because you mentioned how dogs show their teeth in order to communicate this warning, in order to send this signal of like stay away. But that behavior had another purpose before, right? It originally had the purpose of, it originally had the purpose of avoiding or preventing the dog from biting their own lips. So that's why when they were getting ready to attack, they didn't want to bite themselves, so they would show their teeth. And over time, other dogs and other animals learned that that was what dogs used to do before getting ready to attack. So they kind of got the message, and then dogs started only doing that as a way to communicate the message. So the purpose of that behavior changed, right? It started as something that was useful, that had the purpose of preventing dogs from biting themselves, and that changed over time and turned into something that just communicates a warning signal, right? That is the process of ritualization. So careful, it is really key that you guys pay attention when you're reading, and you make sure that you have the right definition. Like, to be honest, I wouldn't read farther once I got the definition, right? Because I can see that this is an example. It says, for example. So I would honestly just read up until here. So it says sociobiologists believe that some communicative behavior is developed through a process called ritualization. So I know that it's a process. What is this process about? It's the process where, so once you've come this way, once you've like got into this point, I think that that's enough, right? You should try to maybe fully get the idea, so you make sure that you got it completely completely clear, and then you don't have to read everything else, right? Is this okay? Do you guys have any questions about this task or anything in particular? Nope. Okay, guys, then let's do one more before we go. This one here. So same thing, you will have 45 seconds to read the text.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a business management class.
Okay, so we've been talking about starting a business. Let's say I want to open up a pizza restaurant. Well, I know how tough it is to make a new business succeed, and I want a sure thing. So I contact a big company that owns a chain of pizza places. Let's say it's called Pizza Town, and I pay for the rights to call my restaurant Pizza Town and to sell Pizza Town's special, one-of-a-kind pizza. Now, since everyone's heard of Pizza Town, it's really popular, I don't have to worry about whether people will want to eat my pizza or not. I already know this pizza will sell well because it's a known thing, and that means that there's a better chance my business will succeed. Now, in exchange for being able to call my restaurant Pizza Town, I have to agree to run the business the Pizza Town way, and Pizza Town trains me to do this. They show me how to do everything, how to make my pizzas taste like Pizza Town pizzas, how to advertise, even how to make my store look like a Pizza Town. Now, this means that I don't have a lot of freedom or choice in the way I run my business. But in a lot of ways, this is great for me. After all, Pizza Town's way generally works. They sell a lot of pizza.
Using the example given by the professor, explain how franchising works. You'll now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So who wants to try? Anyone want to go?
My teacher.
Great, Alejandra, go ahead.
According to the passage, franchising is defined with someone who wants to open a store or restaurant pays an established company for the right to use the company's names and products. The professor explains in the lecture, the professor gives the example of Pizza Town that he don't have to be worried about if people go to the Pizza Town because people know the product and know about the Pizza Town. He also knows that Pizza Town is succeeds, and for run the business like Pizza Town, the Pizza Town owners they give give all the capacitation for making the pizza and the advertising.
Good, yeah, good. So great, you got the ideas. You did give the correct definition, although it was a little bit long, right? To summarize it a little bit if it's too long. Like in this case, it says franchising, someone who wants to open a store or a restaurant pays an established company for the right to use. So yeah, it is pretty long. How could you summarize?
Someone pays an established company for use the names of the company.
Yeah. The franchising is paying an established company for the right to use their name and sell their products. So maybe that. And yeah, and then you mentioned both. You know, you had two key ideas here. The first one was, it was like advantages and disadvantages, right? The advantage of franchising is that you sell more because consumers already know the product, already know the brand, so they are not gonna think about whether they want to like try it out or not. And second, the disadvantage maybe is that they exert a lot of control, right? Because they tell you exactly how to manage the business, how to like sell the pizza, or how to like do the pizza, and how to have the store and how to be advertising, like you said. So you did mention both points. You talked about the example specifically, you gave some details. It was good. Just summarize a little bit more the introduction. Careful with your grammar. You know, the professor doesn't, the professor don't. But in general, it was a good response. Okay, guys. So do you guys have any questions, any comments before we go?
No, teacher.
Okay, great. So this is it. This is task number 3. Next week we'll do task number 4, right? Which is the last one. Before you go though, don't forget today's survey. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. See you all next class.
Bye, teacher. Thank you.
Bye bye, guys.
Goodbye, teacher.